Purposes, we have the superior colliculi, the inferior colliculi, all sitting on the tectal plate, all making up the corpora quadrigemini. And that's it. That's like the hardest thing that I have to teach you, okay? All right, so once again, that's 31. If we go below that tectal plate and that mess of the corpora quadrigemini, we look into the cerebellum. You don't really need to know it for lab, meaning that you don't need to know it for lab, but I do want to go over it just for a second because you will have a picture of your brainstem most likely that shows up on your lecture final. Dr. Samson will tell you this in lecture. Okay, so we have here this tree of life, that white thing, is called the arbor vitae, which translates to mean the tree of life. Once again, the arbor vitae. Now the arbor vitae has leaves on it, all those little projections that come off like little leaves off the tree. They're called the foliae. Okay, the foliae. They give the tree foliage. They make the tree full. Okay, this picture on page 614 in your third edition. I'm sorry, I don't know what page it's on in your second edition. But page 614 at the bottom. Ta-da! Good picture. Great picture. I'm not telling you it's going to be on there, but I'm saying it's a good picture. So maybe take a picture of that. Or maybe write down the page it's on and study it. Understand it. Because even if it doesn't show up, there are questions about the cerebellum that this picture helps with. So cerebellum. And once again, make sure you guys are going to lecture and you understand which pictures he tells you to know for your final. Because he tells everything in class. Like, he'll tell you which pictures. And go to class, guys, because my phone is blowing up because of your guys' Facebook page that nobody's going to class and your curve's not coming back or something. Like a 20% curve. Go to class. You got one class left. So make sure you guys are going there. He will take away the curve. He's done it before. Please don't freak out. Just, it'll be okay. Life will go on. And you guys will go to class and get your curve back. Okay, so this is page 614. I'm going to move it now. All right. Okay, so there's not really much more that I want you guys to worry about the cerebellum. Pretty much that is the cerebellum. Okay, the other thing that we can talk about now, this is a little bit tricky to explain because I'm going to start talking about these things called ventricles. Ventricles aren't structures. They're the lack of structures. They're empty spaces within the brain. Okay, so I can show you that on the aquarium model. Okay, all of these empty spaces we see here, we see empty spaces over here. All of that is representing these things called ventricles. Okay, you can see a little bit better on this side. We have some hollow empty spaces here. Those are all ventricles. Okay, so if I were to take a brain and freeze the CSF in the brain, which sit in all those ventricles, it would look like this. I call this the popsicle model. Okay, that's our CSF popsicle. That's representing what our ventricles would look like. Okay, because remember, they're hollow spaces. They're empty spaces within the brain. Within those empty spaces are the CSF. Okay, so it's frozen. This is what it looks like, our frozen CSF. Now I can tell you now what all the ventricles are named, because of course they all have names and they have parts of them that you guys need to know. The first one is going to be this right here. Okay, this ventricle is called our lateral ventricle. It makes kind of like a crab claw shape, so it's all of this. Okay, once again, these are called the lateral ventricles. The lateral ventricles are made up of 3 different horns, an anterior in the front, a posterior in the back, and an inferior down here. Okay, once again, we have the anterior, posterior, and inferior ventricles. This ventricle right here in the middle is called our third ventricle. The third ventricle sits where the thalamus sits. Okay, so here's the brain. Here's the CSF flowing through all these ventricles. And note that this third ventricle is sitting exactly where the thalamus is. Okay, so I've been telling my class that it's interchangeable, third ventricle and thalamus, because they're the same area. I'm pretty sure on the test what Dr. Samsam has been doing in the past semesters at least, if he wants you to bubble in both, you don't have to because it'll say third ventricle in parentheses thalamus. Okay, so they're not the same thing because remember the ventricles are the empty spaces. The thalamus is this physical area right here. But if you see thalamus in parentheses third ventricle, don't freak out. He's just pointing to this region. Okay, so that's the third ventricle, which means that down here, this thing is going to be called our fourth ventricle. Okay, it's called our fourth ventricle. Okay, now connecting the third ventricle to the fourth ventricle is this line right here. Okay, this line. That line or that duct is called the cerebral spinal fluid is flowing down it. Cerebral aqueduct, think of an aqueduct, water flows down an aqueduct. Cerebral aqueduct of Sylvius. Cerebral aqueduct of Sylvius. And you guys are going to see there are like 4 or 5 crazy names you need to know on the ventricles. Okay, we'll get to those in a second. Okay, so we call this the cerebral aqueduct of Sylvius. I'm going to show you all this nonsense on a poster now. It's a little bit easier to see, and it's easier to explain when you guys can see it within the brain. Okay, these are the ventricles of the brain. Once again, the hollow spaces within the brain where CSF can flow through. So this whole crab claw on the outside is part of the lateral ventricle. Okay, so what horn is number 1? Anterior. What about 2? Posterior. And 3 is? Inferior. Good job, guys. Letter C right there in the middle. What ventricle number is that? 3 or 4?
3.
Okay, if that's 3, what's this one down here? That one's 4. All right, what is this weird skinny line connecting C to, what letter we're looking at? F. Cerebral aqueduct of who? Sylvius. Good job, guys. Cerebral aqueduct of Sylvius. Notice that on this, on the answer key, it just says cerebral aqueduct. You'll probably see of Sylvius on your test. Okay, so here's all the answers if you guys want to take a cool picture of this. All right, so we have these things called apertures. You're going to be able to read them on here. And the apertures are going to be openings that allow CSF to flow from the 4th ventricle, which is way down below, sorry I'm trying not to get in the way, right there, to flow into the spinal column. Okay, so those openings, those apertures, they have names with like physical names in there. The first one's going to be on either side of the 4th ventricle, so it's lateral. Okay, so it's going to be boop, letter E right there, that hole. That's called our lateral aperture, lateral aperture of Luschka. I don't know who Luschka is, but you can assume that he's probably German. Hey Wes, do you know who Luschka is?
No idea.
But yeah, so we have the lateral apertures of Luschka. I want you guys to think of alliteration as your best friend for the ventricles. Luschka, lateral. Luschka, lateral. The lateral apertures of Luschka. Okay? Which means that we have another one down here. It's letter G. It's right in the back. So you have one, it's right in the middle of the back. We call it the median aperture of Magendie. Okay, so think of the term magenta, like the color, magenta. Okay, so median, Magendie, lateral, Luschka. Median, Magendie, lateral, Luschka. Cerebral Sylvius. Okay? That's literally all I did to remember that, and it worked. The last thing I want you guys to know is going to be letter B. Okay, you have 2 of them, one on either hemisphere. Okay, these are representing little tiny holes or foramen that allow CSF to flow from this 3rd ventricle up here to this area, the lateral ventricle. The opening between those, letter B, is called the interventricular, it's in between 2 ventricles, interventricular foramen of Monro. Okay, so by default, I know it's not alliteration, but by default, interventricular foramen is of Monro. So these are just a bunch of guys who found things in the brain and wanted to name them after themselves. Once again, the interventricular foramen of Monro. Okay, so that's a pretty good view of the ventricles that I've seen pop up before. I've seen literally all 3 options that you guys, or all 4. I've seen the aquarium come up as a ventricle question. I've seen this blue picture come up as a ventricle question. I've seen the actual popsicle model come up. And I have seen this one come up most often. So you're going to want to get a picture of this one too. This green one. Okay, this is showing the ventricles as well. All right, it's a pretty cool looking picture. I've seen it a lot. So, if you see the pen here, okay, notice that you have one coming off this side and one coming off this side. This is going to be what? What's the name? Who's the person that we're going to think of? Luschka. So lateral aperture of Luschka. What about this thing coming off the back like a dorsal fin? Sorry. Median aperture of Magendie. What is this entire ventricle called right here? 4th ventricle. What's this one up here? 3rd ventricle. That hole. What's that hole for? Does anyone know? Does it give it away? Oh, it says connexus. Are you saying that? Don't worry about that.
Don't worry about that, yeah.
That hole right there, that's going to be where the interthalamic adhesion or that intermediate mass is passing through. Okay, so that's just a hole for that. He won't probably point at that. I've never seen him do that. Here is showing a foramen that flows CSF from this ventricle up here to this ventricle or back and forth. So that's the interventricular foramen of who? Monro. Okay, so think of Marilyn Monroe. It's the only Monroe I can think of right now, except for our president. What about this skinny tube right here? What's that called? Cerebral aqueduct of who? Sylvius. What horn is this? Anterior. What about this one? Posterior. And what about this one? Inferior. The whole thing is called what ventricle? Lateral ventricle. Okay. Good? Kind of? Just kind of annoying, right? Because I can agree on that. Ventricles are weird. Okay. Everything else on the human brain poster that looks like it's been sitting in his garage for a couple years, which it probably has been, I wouldn't worry about. I've never seen it show up. They're really kind of not good pictures. This is an okay picture, a coronal cut, but you can just show you that on the aquarium and be cool. So for the human brain, I would focus mostly on the green ventricles, and that's probably about it. Take a picture of it all, but I always like to give you guys a list of what is most important. Always study those first, and then take the time if you can to study the remaining things on your syllabus. All right, so those are our ventricles. The last thing that we need to do, we're doing great on time, the last thing we need to do is the brainstem. The brainstem is made up of 3 different portions. The first portion of our brainstem is going to be above this pen. Okay, so this pen is like a straight line. Everything above it, so this area, it's called our midbrain. Okay, it's called our midbrain. So it's kind of in the middle of our brain. So we call it the midbrain. If we look at it from this angle, you can see it right here, number 33. That top portion of the brainstem is called the midbrain. The next portion is this circular area and the area kind of right behind it. Okay, so this nice circular area, I like to think of a pawn on a chessboard because it has a circular head. So this is called our pons, the P-O-N-S. Okay, it's called the P-O-N-S, the pons. If you look at it from directly onward, from underneath, it does make this giant circular bump. Okay, so 33 here is the midbrain, 36 is the pons, and then lastly, does anyone know what the bottom portion is called? It's got a funny name. Medulla oblongata. And just because I like to make it fair, and I showed Tuesday and Monday this, so if you guys were here, you gotta watch it again. Have you guys seen Waterboy?
Right.
Maybe? Okay, well, this is one of Adam Sandler's early 2000s movie.
Y'all shut up now. Last week, we talked about the physiology of the animal brain as it pertains to aggression. Now, is there anyone here to tell me why most alligators are abnormally aggressive? I want to answer this question. Anybody? Anyone? Yes, please.
Mama said that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Your mama said alligators are ornery because they got all their teeth and no toothbrush. Wow. Anybody else? Yes, you.
Alligators are aggressive because of an enlarged medulla oblongata. It's the second brain which controls us.
That is correct. The medulla oblongata. The medulla oblongata is where anger, jealousy, and aggression come from. Is there anybody here can tell me where happiness comes from? Anyone? All right. Let's hear what Mama has to say on the subject.
Mama say that happiness is from magic rays of sunshine that come down when you feeling blue.
Well, folks, Mama's wrong again.
Don't call me Sandwich, you're wrong. Mama's right.
Right, something wrong with his medulla oblongata.
That's it. That was the first time I'd ever heard that term. I think I was 10 when that movie came out, maybe a little bit older. But yeah, good times. It's on Netflix if everyone wants to go watch that movie. It'll rot your brain just a little bit. Alright, so that's the medulla oblongata. It really does that, by the way. It controls aggression, which is kind of cool. So if you're going to learn anything from one of those movies, there you go. You don't need to know that, though. What we do need to know about the brainstem, though, is going to be all your cranial nerves. So I have everything written on the board for you guys again. We are revisiting that from Unit 2. The name and the number are important. Okay, the function, not so much. Maybe for lecture, we're doing the central nervous system. Of course, we're gonna be doing the cranial nerves. So everything is up here for you guys. Absolutely know the name and number. You guys know by now that if, let's say, olfactory, which is cranial nerve 1, is penned, and answer choice A says cranial nerve 1, and answer choice B says olfactory nerve, you bubble in both. Okay, so there are gonna be some multiple answer questions on this next test. Okay, and the cranial nerves will make up probably like a good 5 or 6 questions. It'll be a chunk. Okay, so make sure you understand them. All right, so this is what we're looking at underside the brain. If I were to draw this out for you, I'm going to do that first. If I were to draw this and keep it like really simple in 2D, we would have the midbrain right here. All right, and then it kind of goes out there into the pons. And then it kind of goes down at an angle into the medulla oblongata. Okay, and then I guess up here is like the cerebrum with the heavy face. Okay, so we have our cerebrum up here. So again, we're looking at like this. So we need to know where these cranial nerves start, where they originate, meaning that do they start in the cerebrum, do they start on the midbrain, the pons, or the medulla oblongata? Cranial nerves 1 and 2 are on the cerebrum. That's where we find them. Cranial nerves 3 and 4 are on the midbrain, so this area. Okay. Cranial nerves 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all in the pons. Okay, which means that we have 9, 10, 11, and 12 on the medulla oblongata. Okay. So this is all on the board. It's drawn a little bit neater than this one, but this is what we're dealing with. Cranial nerves 1 and 2, know their names. 1 is olfactory, 2 is optic, 3 is ocular motor. What is 4? People always forget this one, which is why I ask. Trochlear, good job. 5 is trigeminal. You do need to know the 3 branches, okay? Ophthalmic, maxillary, mandibular. If one of them is doing something, or one of them is pointed to by itself, that's what you're bubbling at. Always most specific. Okay, 6 is abducens, 7 is facial. What is 8? Vestibular cochlear, that Anoop went over. Vestibular cochlear. What is 9? Glossopharyngeal. 10 is vagus. 11 is accessory. What's 12? Hypoglossal. And I could care less if you guys are reading. Just try and relearn those the best that you can, because that's going to be what you guys are dealing with. Okay? So that's where they all start. So if I finally take the model, actually before we get there, I want to show you what the medulla oblongata is made up of. It's made up of these stacks, or these stalks, called pyramids. Okay, so all of these are called pyramids. So it almost looks like someone took a bunch of dry spaghetti and bundled it together at the bottom of your brainstem. That's going to be your pyramids. And then also on your pyramids on either side, you have these 2 almost rounded humps. Okay, those are going to be called the olives. They're literally shaped like little olives. So these are the olives of your medulla oblongata. Okay, and lastly, also found on the medulla oblongata is a little thing down here, a little square. Okay, and I'll show you on the model so it'll make more sense. It's going to be the root to your first spinal nerve. Okay, so technically it's the root to C1, so your first cervical nerve. Okay, and you will see all of this on the model. I just want you guys to understand the medulla oblongata is kind of my least favorite to learn because it's got the most stuff on it. It's kind of got a lot going on for it. All right, so good. I'm going to move this. If we look up here at the actual cerebrum, we can see this first nerve right there. That is our first cervical nerve, or sorry, first cranial nerve. What's the name of it? Olfactory. You have one nose. Olfactory nerve. Okay. Now specifically, the olfactory nerve is pretty much the only one I want to talk about for a second because it's got these different parts to it. You can see it better on this poster. Okay, this is like Dr. Sam Sam's favorite poster. He's got like 5 copies of this. Okay, so you can see where the olfactory nerve right there, it balloons up and kind of forms a light bulb shape right there. Okay, that light bulb shape is called the olfactory bulb. B-U-L-B, like light bulb. Olfactory bulb. If the pin is there, that's what you're bubbling in. If the pin is anywhere below it on the straightaway, it's called the olfactory tract. Like a track. It's a straight line, a straight road. It's called the olfactory tract. Okay, cranial nerve 2, the optic nerve, is also here on the cerebrum, but specifically it has a special portion right here. What's that thing called? Optic chiasm. Good job, guys. A chiasm is a cross. Okay, a bridge or a cross. Okay, so optic chiasm. So back on the model before we do the poster. We have cranial nerve 1 and 2 on the cerebrum. Moving downwards, you can see the mammillary bodies, the boobies of the brain, but let's go below that. We can see cranial nerve 3 right here on either side, because it is a mirror image. We have cranial nerve 3 on either side, okay, on the midbrain. So 33 is the midbrain. Then we have cranial nerve 4. 4 is weird, but believe me on this. 4 originates from the midbrain, but right here it's like laying on top of the pons. I know it's kind of confusing, but 3 and 4, both of them are from the midbrain. Okay, so it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. On this side it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's keep going down on this side. This big thick one is going to be cranial nerve 5. Obviously it's big, it's giant, it's got 3 branches. It's the trigeminal nerve. So this one is 5. 6 is not right here. 6 is down here at the 6 o'clock position. So hopefully that helps you out. The 6 o'clock position is cranial nerve 6. Then we go upwards. So directly next to 6 is 7. And there's 8. Okay, so again it goes 5, jump to 6 o'clock, 6, 7, and 8. It makes more sense as a clock on this side because we have 5, 6 at 6 o'clock, 7 at 7 o'clock, 8 at 8 o'clock. Okay, now we're going to jump down to the medulla oblongata. We have 9 right here. Okay, so 9, 10, 11 is very long. 11 is long. Jump up to 12. So this one's 12. 12 and 6 are finicky. They like to be next to each other, so they're really annoying. So we have 6 and we have 12. This down here, number 40, remember, that's what's the root to C1. That is what a lot of students, he'll pin it, Dr. Samson will pin it, and a lot of students will be like, cranial nerve 12, done, got it, and they'll walk out of here not even realizing that they got that wrong. That is the first cervical nerve, okay, the root to C1. Up here is 12. 38 we can see, it's a bump, a rounded hump on the medulla oblongata. What is 38?
Olive.
The olive. Good job. It is the olive. Olive, like the stalks that make up the medulla oblongata, what are those called?
Pyramids.
They're called pyramids. Good job. They're kind of hard to see on dot cam. You can kind of see the ridges right here if I shadow it a little bit. Those are all the pyramids. All right, so let's count. Let's go. Here, what's this one?
1,
1. What's this one?
2,
2. What is this one?
4,
4. What is this one? 7. What about this one? 5. What's this one?
3,
3. Good job. What about this one?
8,
8. This one?
6,
6. What's this one right here? 12. What about this long one?
11,
11. What about this? Root to C1. What is this one right here? 9. And what is this one? 10. Good job, guys. So it's not too difficult, right? I mean, it's pretty easy. Everything goes for the most part in order. 6 and 12 are kind of weird. But if you remember that, you're pretty much good for quite a few questions for this next test. So let me show you this on a poster. Because both are fair game, you'll probably see an equal amount of both, the poster, so this poster, and a brain stem. So on here, let's say that the pin, we're right here. What number is that? Is it 9 or 10?
10,
It is 10. What about this one?
9,
9. What is this one?
11,
11. This one?
C1,
Root to C1. Good job, yes. Or good job, guys. What's this one? 12. What's the one right above 12?
6,
6. What's the one right next to 6?
7,
7. What's this one?
9,
8. Good job. Okay, so we have 6, 7, 8. This is why I hate this poster. I will always say this. It's the worst thing in the world. 7 has 2 branches on this poster on either side. Okay, I know why, but it doesn't need to be there. It's just kind of an excess amount of information for you guys to know. So these 2 branches right here are both 7. This is 8. Because remember, 7 is closest to 6. So it goes 6, 7 are these 2 branches. 8 is right here. 9 is right here. Okay. 9 is going to be called what? What's the name for 9? Starts with a G. Glossopharyngeal. 10 is here. What's 10? Vagus. That one's easy. 11. What's the name for 11? Accessory. Good job. This big one right here. What's this? What's the name of it? Trigeminal. What's the first branch of the trigeminal? Ophthalmic. What's the second branch? Maxillary. Third branch is mandibular. Good job. What about this branch right here? What is that? What number? 4. Which makes this one what number? 3. What's the name of 4? Trochlear. Good job. What's the name of 3? Ocular motor. What's the name of 2? Optic. But what's the name of this thing right here? Optic chiasm. What's the name of this thing on the olfactory nerve? Olfactory bulb. Excellent job. What is this right here? These two branches make up cranial nerve number 7. Name of it is? Name of 7 is facial. Name of 7 is facial. Here's number 8. What's the name of number 8? Vestibular cochlear. Vestibular cochlear. It's okay if you guys are just kind of a little rough on it still. Study that. Make sure you know the names and the numbers. Okay? As long as you guys can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, C1. You're good. You just have to write down on your cover sheet the names and numbers together because you need to bubble both those in. Okay? Good? Yes? All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over a little bit of the ear first. There are a couple things that I think weren't clear what Anoop said, so I'll clarify that. It's just a couple things that kind of get lost in translation between the poster and the model. So I'll explain that, and then we'll kind of do a review of some of the other posters. All right, so the ear model, let's start with that. Okay, so one thing I want to point out, I'm not sure why he was doing this. I was going to ask him before he left. He had the ear upside down. Okay, so it'll be fine, don't worry. You guys learned it correctly. He just had everything upside down, so it might have been confusing. So the outside of the ear. Okay, here is the outer ear. The outer ear is called your what? And you've called it the auricle. The auricle. Okay, so the outer ear is also known as your auricle. Another name for the auricle is the pinna. P-I-N-N-A. The pinna. Okay, so the auricle or the pinna. Right, once again, the auricle or the pinna. Okay, now he called this thing right here the what?
Helix.
The helix. Good job, the helix. This bump here is called the
Anti-helix.
antihelix. What is the fold in between the helix and antihelix? Scapha. The scapha. The scapha is where people will get their ears pierced. Okay, it's kind of in that cartilage. All right, the scapha. What's this area right here? Concha. Good job. This is called the antitragus. What's the name of the flap that if you plug your ears, you're covering it? It's called the tragus. Okay, so the tragus is, I guess, a more popular place currently for people to get their ears pierced. You can't see it on this model, but it's that flap of skin that if someone's like, plug your ears, you push down on your tragus. This thing is going to be called our external auditory canal, external auditory meatus. Any variation of that, you guys know Dr. Samsam isn't going to pick on you with that term. So just understand that external auditory canal and meatus and acoustic all mean the same thing. Okay, moving inwards, sound is going to enter the ear, obviously, and then it's going to hit this thing right here called your tympanic membrane or your eardrum. Okay, so a tympani is a drum, so it's called your tympanic membrane. Okay, that's how I used to relate eardrum and tympanic membrane to one another. Okay, so it's called your tympanic membrane. On the back side, okay, we're getting into like the inner ear now. Specifically, the small chunk right there is called the middle ear before we get down here to the inner ear. This middle ear area right behind the tympanic membrane has the smallest bones in your body called your ossicles. Okay, and Anoop did go over these. It's the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. Okay, the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. Okay, so those, once again, they're collectively called your ossicles. They are the smallest bones in your body, tiny little inner workings of your ear. Okay, so if I can show you on this, but it kind of not the best way to show you. This is what they look like on the poster. Okay, so these bones right here, these are the ossicles. This one that has like a sharp tooth on it, I think of the band Incubus, it's called your incus. It's called your incus. This one right here is called your malleus. Okay, that's the one that I knew called a hammer. I used to think of it as a mallet. So the mallet is the malleus. Connected to the base of the incus is the stapes. It looks like a stirrup. Some people say it looks like a staple. So that's called the stapes. All right. So these are really important bones because they can help move different. They can attach to different muscles and move and allow sound to go through the eardrum and into the inner ear. Okay. So on the back here, you have the malleus. Okay. The malleus is the bone that connects directly to the eardrum. Okay. So your tympanic membrane, which should make sense because you hit your drum with your mallet. Okay. So you hit your tympanic membrane with the malleus. It's connected directly to it. Connected to the malleus is the incus. Connected to the base of the incus, it's broken off because everything's broken in this lab. It's called the stapes. Okay, the stapes. There's a picture of your eardrum. It's in your book. Anytime I show you a picture from your book, that means know it for lecture, not really much for lab. It's page 668, this picture. Okay, this picture goes way more in depth on your actual eardrum than we will ever talk about here in lab. So that's why it's important to know for lecture. Okay, once again, it's page 668. Okay, there are terms like umbo or umbo, I don't even know how to say that you might need to know for lecture that I'm not going to talk about here in lab. Okay, and that umbo or umbo, or however you say it, is just where the base of that malleus is attaching to the tympanic membrane. Okay, that's all that means. Okay, so obviously if there's something that I'm going over from the lecture book, it's probably not for lab. Make sure you guys get a head start in understanding of this picture. And once again, if a picture that I talk about here in lab does not directly show up, knowing this picture will still help you with some of the actual the questions. All right. So we have those ossicles. Now, if you think of the ossicles in this way, hopefully it'll help you. I used to think of the stapes as the pedal on a bass drum. So you're constantly going like this. Okay, so the stapes is going to open up something called the oval window that Anoop went over. If there's anything I want you guys to have gathered from Anoop and me talking about the ear, I want you to know that the stapes sits in the oval window. Okay, I think I just said round window. Okay, make sure you know that the stapes is sitting in something called the oval window. Stapes, oval window. And the base of the stapes is shaped like an oval, so hopefully that will help you. Okay, so once again we call it the oval window where the stapes sits. All right, so sound is going to enter into this tube, so we can see it here, entering into the ear. It hits your eardrum. Zoom up on that, we get a picture that looks like this. It's going to hit that eardrum, and because of that, this malleus is going to move, which causes this bone right here to move, and then allows pressure to move here through the inner workings of your ear. And that's getting way more into physiology than you guys need to worry about. So all you need to know is that the round window is open. The oval window is not. It is covered. Okay, it's covered by the stapes. The reason that we have nothing in the round window, okay, so if this is pinned, and the first question is, what is this? You're going to bubble in round window. And the second question says, what sits or covers this window? You're going to put nothing. Okay, and the reason that we have nothing in there is because you have all this pressure moving through our cochlea, and it has to escape through that window. If we had something covering that window, and your body, for whatever reason, doesn't open that window fast enough, that pressure is going to build up and burst your ear, and you can't hear anymore. Okay, so that round window doesn't have anything covering it. Technically there's a membrane, but I don't want to confuse you guys. Nothing sits in the round window. Oval window, round window. Oval stapes, round window empty. It's naked. Okay. Now swirling through the vestibule and the cochlea is this deep blue thing. What is it called? It's called a duct. So simply we just call it the cochlear duct. The cochlear duct. So the duct that swirls through the cochlea is just called the cochlear duct. It's that dark blue thing that swirls around there. Okay, so you do need to know that, the cochlear duct. If I were to show you on an anatomical model, so we're going deep into the ear, into our cochlea and our vestibules, this little thing, this little inner working that you can see here. Okay, and we cut it sagittally, and I show you these like brown dots. Those are the cochlear duct. Okay, those are representing the cochlear duct because it's swirling through the cochlea, and we've just cut it. Okay, so once again, if the pen is here, okay, important to know, if the pen is here, you want the cochlear duct. Okay, so that's a common question. Cochlear duct. All right. Then we have a nerve that goes to the cochlea. It's the cochlear nerve. We do have a branch that would go here technically. The straight area right here is called the vestibule. So that's the vestibular nerve, and this is the cochlear nerve. Together they're gonna go up and make what cranial nerve? What number? Not 7, it's 8. It's called your vestibular cochlear nerve. You can see it happening here. All right, so on this model, we have going to the cochlea, the cochlear nerve. This way it's been cut, but going to the vestibular nerve, or sorry, going to the vestibule is the vestibular nerve. Together they make the vestibular cochlear nerve. Okay, so those are cool and important. And then in the inner ear down here, we have this tube, okay? That's going to be called our pharyngeotympanic tube. Okay, another name for the pharyngeotympanic tube is eustachian tube, and I think Anoop forgot to mention that one. It's called the eustachian tube. And the third name that I want you guys to know is the auditory tube. Okay, so I know Anoop mentioned the internal auditory canal, or meatus. The three I want you to know for this test is pharyngeotympanic, eustachian, and auditory tube. Okay, and that's written on the board for you. Eustachian tube, pharyngeotympanic, and auditory tube. Okay, that's the inner kind of hole right here. Why do you think we call it pharyngeotympanic tube? Where is that tube going to drain into? Your pharynx. Okay, good job. Your pharynx. It's your throat. Everything's connected. Your ears, nose, and throat are all connected. Okay, and it's due to this tube right here. You guys have ever been on an airplane and your ears start popping? That's thanks to this guy right here. He's regulating the pressure in your ears. Okay, which is why sometimes when you hold your nose, you swallow or sneeze or whatever they tell you to do, it can help relieve pressure in this tube. Okay, that's your eustachian tube, or your pharyngeotympanic tube, or your auditory tube. Your auditory tube. Okay? Moving backwards, there's 3 posters, okay? If you guys want to like jot this down to keep organized. 3 posters for the ear, 2 for the brain, 2 for the eye. So again, 3 for the ear, 2 for the eye, 2 for the brain. Okay? Inside, we have the inner working right here. I know that Anoop showed you this one just for a split second. We have the outer ear, sound going in. We have the tympanic membrane, obviously. Those really small ossicle bones that help move everything around. So you can see that here, the malleus, the incus, and connected to the base of the incus is the stapes sitting in the oval window. But the stapes has to move. Okay, it's not just going to sit there by itself and like act like a bass drum without any movement. There's a muscle that helps move the stapes bone, and it's called the stapedius muscle. So stapedius muscle moves the stapes.